On this episode of AV Week, AV Network Security, how 21.9 is going to save the projector business, and the dangers of counterfeit AV. All that and more, next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 594, recorded Friday, January 6th, 2023. 3 T's. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. Happy New Year. It has been a minute since I have been behind this microphone. It's been a minute since I've been doing this at all, but we'll talk about that in a second. With me to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, Timothy Troast from Legrand AV. Welcome, sir.
Hello. Happy New Year, Tim.
Happy New Year. And to round out the 3 T's, because that's what we're just going to call this episode, I've just decided that, Mr. Tobi Tungl from my neck of the woods, well, from my company neck of the woods. How about that, from CTI? Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Tim. Happy New Year as well.
Happy New Year. Neck of the woods for Tobi, geographically speaking, is more in line of Michigan, and Tim is in the greater New Jersey, New York area. So, and I'm still in St. Louis, kids. So, because I don't know, Midwest. I mentioned the fact that I hadn't been here for a second. I really quickly, and I'll write some more about this, but I want to say thanks so much to colleagues and folks who kind of covered for me and let me do some things on a personal level and take care of some issues that I was having. So thank you so much. First and foremost, Mitchell, for holding the fort down. Did an incredible job, both in the year end and the best of. And if you haven't listened to those, you need to stop this recording now and go listen to those. And he's going to throw something at me if he was physically in the same space. So he might do something mean to my audio. Who knows? All right. First story comes to us from AV Magazine's L-Acoustics and the Chinese government has eliminated a group that was counterfeiting L-Acoustics gear. There were 5 people involved. They were fined and sentenced to 1 to 3 years in prison. In addition, the authorities seized the molds they were using as well as some signs. Mr. Troast, you work for a manufacturer, so we'll pick on you first. How do companies prevent counterfeiting from coming into the U.S. or coming into other countries, since they're used a lot of times, either they're using the same factories or they're using similar factories maybe down the street?
It's not easy, Tim. And to your point, because the factories, generally speaking, are so close together, the talent cross-pollinates between them. So the ideas have a tendency to wander and travel too. It's a couple different ways. Our sales teams keep an eye out on what's going on. They're close and in tune with the installations that are happening out there. And if they see something that doesn't look right, something they know they didn't sell, that usually becomes kind of the first inkling into it. Our customers are definitely advocates and recognize what we deliver as a manufacturer and the value of our brands, the quality of the products. You can get insider feedback again from them when they recognize, screws have changed, mounting mechanisms have changed, right? Our installers do this day in and day out. So even when we make tweaks intentionally, we get those phone calls. So unintentionally, that information comes in.
I was going to say, you said the ideas tend to find their way to other factories. We're not talking about ideas here. We're talking about your plans, right? Somebody picked up and took a flash drive somewhere and went down the road and said, here, make this, right?
It happens. Yeah, absolutely. They had schematics in order to make this happen. They had the CAD drawings. So, there's varying degrees that occur, and this one is at the extreme end of the state. So we also leverage our IP. Global IP is a significant investment for any manufacturer to try to control what they have and ensure that not only are there not fakes that go elsewhere, but these plants that manufacture goods for multiple companies, that technology doesn't end up in other manufacturers or brands' hands.
Toby, from a customer standpoint and delivering, a quality product and a system that works, what are the dangers or for customers and what can they do if they receive counterfeit gear, right? If they go into their system and suddenly Yamaha is spelled, I don't know, with 4 A's or something, what can they do as a recourse if they find counterfeit gear in their systems?
Oh, first change the sticker so it's spelled correctly so everybody knows what you got there. But, I think it goes a step further and probably a little bit earlier in the project chain where, to Tim's point, as the installation team is on site putting that gear in, they're going to know if something's off on it, if a thread's different, if the quality of the hardware or the enclosure isn't the same. I mean, these guys touch this stuff day in and day out, and they know for sure if something just seems weird. I mean, we've all seen it where you've got the knockoff AirPods and different things that you come across. When you pick them up, you can feel the difference of quality, right? And I think what's the old saying, imitation is the best form of flattery. Yeah. Obviously, some of these manufacturers have some really cool technologies that other people want to try to exploit. And it's unfortunate, but I think our first line of defense is the installation team and the technical staff that are touching it, servicing it, installing it, and supporting it. From a client perspective, you've got to put some trust in your partner to be able to identify some of that stuff, because let's be honest, black boxes are cool, but most customers don't really care what logo's on it as long as it's a good quality product that they're going to stand behind and support the integrator that put it in for them.
Yeah. Really quickly before I ask you guys this last question, hats off to the Chinese government, and I don't believe I just said that, right? But hats off to the Chinese government, because in years past they have pushed back against IP. They pushed back against global IP. They have actively ignored it. They have told certain companies that we don't care. It's kind of on your deal to kind of prosecute this. And hats off to them for going after it and for helping L-Acoustics in this case identify these people and prosecute them and get real jail time. This is for either of you. What are the dangers of counterfeit gear? I mean, I know some of them are kind of obvious. Tim works for Legrand. They make chief mounts. A mount that is not made properly, there's some danger there. But what are dangers here of, L-Acoustics makes speakers and audio systems? Maybe that's a danger. Maybe if we're talking about Shure and Sennheiser both had a swath of these a couple of years ago. What are some dangers here of counterfeit gear, other than obviously the violation of IP?
I'm going to take a step back really quick there, Tim, because your point on the Chinese government leaning in, I can't help but think, as they hear a number of domestic or U.S. brands delevering their supply chain out of China and looking towards nearshore opportunities, moving to other economies, China's going to have to up their game for companies to maintain production in that region. So this could be kind of that first bit that demonstrates some more rigor in China. So that was my first piece. But to go back to the second area, I've been involved in situations that are terrible, where you've got a life safety challenge, you've got a product that failed as a result of bad design. We get called in to explain the situation and through analysis ultimately identify that it's not one of our products, albeit it may have a sticker that makes it look like it, Legrand with 4 E's in this case, but it's not truly that. And so it puts the end user in a precarious place. The other piece I would say too is in the UL inspectors, when an inspector's on site, there's a lot more diligence in place to ensure that the products are what they say they are, and tracing back the filings and stuff. So there's a couple of different places, and I think the level of sophistication, the criticality of an installation has more rigor wrapped around it to try to protect it, because it can be dangerous, to your point.
I think I learned a new word there, criticality. I haven't heard that word in quite a while.
To Tim's point here, that it might be another silver lining to come out of COVID, because here's the thing: the reason, one of the main reasons, and we can look at different ones. One of the main reasons that supply chains are an issue right now, and companies are looking to near shore or looking at other countries, is because of COVID and because of the lockdowns that China did go through. So yeah, it might be a silver lining to COVID as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anyhow. All right. Next story. Utelogy has completed their SOC 2 Type 2 certification. SOC stands for Service Organizational Control. The certification says Utelogy prioritizes the protection of data. According to their CEO, Kevin Morrison, quote unquote, Utelogy's achievement is a testimony to our ongoing commitment to our partners and customers. Toby, first question goes to you. How important is security becoming to customers and end users when it comes to their AV gear?
I think it's pretty much top of mind with anybody. When you're talking to clients about any type of project, from a basic Teams or Zoom room to any type of gear that has a network port on it, the first thing they want to know is, what do I got to do to open this thing up? Can I lock it down? Does it need internet access? All that stuff. Compliancy is huge, right? And you have chief security officers that are tasked with constant battles and all the craziness that happens out on the dark web for trying to take all this stuff down. That compliance, I think, really gives them a benefit to know that they've got the backing on it. They're following through with all the, the T's crossed, the I's dotted to make sure that the product is safe, as secure as it can be from day to day. As we know, things change and all kinds of craziness happens all across the world every day. But I would say 99.9% of clients we're talking to today, that is one of their first questions. If we're talking about what problems we're looking to solve, how do we make it secure? How do we make it safe? And how do we make sure the products and software that we're using are staying in line with what everybody else is asking for today?
All right, Tim, what can manufacturers do to help integrators like Toby and customers, understand the necessity of this, but also help secure their products before they even ship them out?
Yeah, it's critical whether you talk about SOC or ISO, right? ISO 27001 is a cybersecurity standard. I think to Toby's point, we're in a day and age that the sophistication of the hackers is so great that you have to be in a position as a manufacturer to wrap that level of diligence around your products, to demonstrate that you've leveraged and worked with other firms to prove out the concepts that your engineering team has developed is I think necessary, because it's not a matter of if, it's just when somebody's going to get attacked, and you want to be in a place as a manufacturer to prove out, no different than we do with UL for electrical or your mount example. We've gone through and done the weight testing. This is the similar to physical infrastructure, just digital.
Really quickly, because Tim mentioned a phrase that I am very fond of, sort of. You'll understand in a second. Teresa Payton, a young woman that I met a number of years ago, a fantastic security expert. She was the first CTO or the first CIO in the White House. Watched a presentation with her a number of years ago, and she used that very phrase. It is not a question of if, it is when. All of us that have a network will have some sort of attack on us. Where's the biggest threats coming for customers on their AV gear? Is it outside? Is it, take higher education, for example? Is it internal? Is it students trying to just screw with the projector and the professors? Is it I don't know, Toby trying to watch YouTube when he's not supposed to on the network? Where is the biggest threats coming to clients' networks?
It's probably more internally focused, really, because you've got folks that are bringing devices into a customer site, or to your example for students bringing in laptops or thumb drives into a higher education network, potentially plugging that into the laptop. It's on the Wi-Fi, and who knows what kind of malware is going to expand and spread through the network from just that simple, connection point, right? And I do think that things happen on the outside, but I think it's proven that lately it's been more towards individual users that can get access, or they know they're going into a building, or they know that they're tied to public Wi-Fi and they can get into their laptop, so they can actually put in some malware. So when they go to get on a corporate network or on a higher education, it can start to really create some havoc. Not to say that they're not going to have crazy, and I don't know all the security terms for this, but like when they go after a network and just hit it with everything they got, I think it's more on the user base and getting them through those, the basic security protocols where they already have an account, they already can get on the access points, or they can already plug into the Ethernet and get access to what they have. And then from there, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, I think the answer is every way, right? It's internal, it's external. And the primary factor probably depends on the size of the organization, right? Global companies, enterprise, and you go into government and security, obviously their rigor is greater, and their the device allowances of what they allow on their network, and the control is greater. So smaller companies, generally less sophistication, more enabling and allowing of people to let personal devices on the network. But I think back to the Target breach. When was that? 4 or 5 years ago, right? It came in
Oh
through the.
Lord, that was 10 years ago now, dude.
Was it? Damn,
Yeah.
damn, I'm old. Right? That came through the Honeywell HVAC system, and you fast forward to what, last week when LastPass got hacked, right? It's everywhere and anywhere, and you have to do you have to have an IT team, you have to have a cybersecurity team that's well versed in this, and honestly, if you don't have the horsepower in house, it's a great place to go outside and get consulting resources.
So there's a couple of things I want to highlight here. And first of all, I know something that Toby doesn't. The phrase you're looking for is brute force attack, is when they throw everything at it.
Yes.
It's the only one I'll get the entire year. I'm going to take it. It is the 6th of January, so I have 360. Yeah. But again, because I'm old like Tim, the net was Netflix and Amazon and a bunch of other streaming services that got hit with a DDoS attack. Unfortunately, like 5 years ago now, because it was 2017, 2018, and a lot of those devices, they were zombie devices, things like computers, but also the Chris Krebs on security. He listed all the devices that these folks used. A number of them were cable boxes. In that list was a very well-known speaker company and a very well-known speaker that happened to be networked. At the time, I was doing a security presentation for a couple of integrators, and that's where I was introduced to Shodan. Shodan.io is the website. If you go in there and you type in whatever you want, there are publicly facing devices out there. Probably still, I haven't done it in a couple of months, but it is a way for you to test the security of your own system, right? But also of your clients as well. Last story here comes to us from our friends over at AV Network and SCN. Draper has added a 21.9 screen to their lineup really quickly. Daylight is a member of Legrand AV. Daylight and Legrand is a sponsor of AVNation. It's a competitor to Draper. According to the SCN article, Draper has developed the 21.9 screen in response to the introduction of the front row layout for Microsoft Teams Room and the 21.9 display format. To get the best experience, according to the article, with 21.9, it's recommended using a 4K UHD projector or higher resolution, as the vertical resolution of 21.9 images are 2160, which is, of course, higher than 1080, because 21 is higher than 1080, or WUXGA projectors. Tim, a question for you first. I saw 21.9 9 months ago at ISC in 22 at Barcelona. Since then, I've heard rumblings, certainly from Microsoft, but from other display and screen manufacturers. Where is 21.9 going? Like, where do we expect this to head?
It's a great question, Tim. I think it's all the buzz, right? Everyone's talking about 21.9, and even 32.9 started to crop up as another aspect ratio. But I think, yeah, right. But I think ultimately what we're getting out of this is wider is better, is what Microsoft's pushing. I'll say too, as a technologist, if you will, I like the fact that it's a solution to a problem that's been identified in conferencing. Personally, I'm moving away from dual displays. I think single displays are easier to operate, easier to connect, easier to use in a space. So whatever that aspect ratio becomes, I don't know. But it's an interesting evolution to the history of Ks, right? We're going to 4K, we're talking 8K, now we're talking aspect ratios. So we're at DPI and dimensions ultimately. But the projector portion of it, and applaud Draper for recognizing the trend too, is this could be a big comeback for ultra short throw projectors, because that Microsoft front row requires a large screen, and to do it with LCD and LED can be pretty expensive and expensive to install.
Yeah, absolutely. Toby, how will this push by Microsoft impact the design of systems? How will it impact the customers?
Well, first and foremost, I love ultrawide. I have been on ultrawide since pretty much day 2. I am currently looking at an ultrawide sitting on my desktop at home. Going away from the dual screen setup and video conferencing, I think, has been something that our clients have been pushing for quite some time. I mean, the dual screen setup from 20 years ago with the 4:3 rear projection, people are over it, right? They want something a little more sleek, a little more fancy from that perspective. To Tim's point, I do love the idea of the ultra short throw projector because the cost and entry barrier comes down substantially. I love LED walls. They're really cool, but it does require a lot more power consideration, heat load stuff, the sizable room, and the budgets are going to be sometimes 4 and 5 times more money than potentially just a projector. And I think the people are driving for that because it's got such a more streamlined approach. It's technology that I think everybody really, really likes to see simply because it's got, everybody hates millions. I mean, remember 5-6 years ago when a 1/2-inch million was awesome. Now we want edgeless, right? So I think giving these projectors this option and short throw and the screen manufacturers recognizing that is going to really be a huge game changer as we see the next probably 12 or 24 months as we get in with architects and clients ahead of time to really show them, hey, we don't need all this real estate that we thought we needed. We can really make a more impactful solution for you and a better experience and probably save you a ton of money doing it.
And I'll build on the back of that, Toby, because with different types of projection screens, ultimately we can roll up into the ceiling, roll down into a credenza. From a designer standpoint, you can eliminate the view of AV in the space when it's not in use, which is usually a selling feature to that community.
Oh, 100%. I mean, to me, technology should enhance the experience and not be the focal point. Now, granted, I love the cool LED wall like everybody else and cool projection screen. But when you walk into a space, it should feel like that space is there to collaborate and use the space for what it is, not say, oh, hey, look, we rolled in an overhead projector over there. That's going to be what we're going to be using today.
The problem with that statement, Toby, is anybody under 40 won't know what you mean by overhead projector. So
I mean, that's fair. But
really quickly, guys, as we wrap this up, besides Microsoft, because they're the ones like, hey, we should do this. Besides Microsoft, who is asking for 21.9?
Well, that's a good point. Right now, from our perspective,
maybe it's not 21.9. Maybe I shouldn't pick on 21.9. But who is asking for the wider is better, to use Tim's phrase?
Oh, wider is better. From my perspective, it is your executive levels that are in financial as well as higher education are really starting to push towards that, at least what I'm starting to see. If you think of like your typical higher education room, a lot of times they had 3 screens in there, right? You got your center one and then your 2, and they're looking at how do I consolidate that down, both from a hardware support perspective, but a cost perspective. They're pushing for it. They tend to be a little, out there sometimes on some of the timelines to get some of that stuff done and implemented compared to, say, corporate America. But we just had a conversation with a client up in New York City that wants to put in 21.9 in their boardroom because they feel like that is what's going to set them up for the next 5 to 6 years.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you so much. From Legrand, thank you for joining us. Mr. Timothy Troast, how do people connect with you or Legrand AV?
You can find me on the socials at Timothy Troast, or easily find us at legrandav.com.
Mr. Tungl, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
On the socials at Tobi Tungl, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the fun stuff. Carrier pigeon is Tobi Tungl at CTI.com, and our wonderful website is CTI.com.
It is indeed. For me, for Tim Albright, do not follow me on the Twitters. At this point, and if you're watching video, you'll get this. At this point, I don't know that I'm rooting for the Bears to have the first pick overall, but that's kind of what they're playing for. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about on Twitter. But go by the website if you would, please, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. I mentioned the fact that Mitchell, our fantastic editor and producer, kicked butt the last couple of weeks on the best of and the year end. But also you'll find programs like AVWeek, XR Star, and a brand new host on EdTech, Aaron Moran. So check all that out. Also, it is January, so that means it is time for the AVNation Reader's Choice Awards. Round 1 actually just ended by the time you hear this. So round 2 is up and running, so go by the website, and I'll have Mitchell put a link directly to the voting page on that. Also, we are headed to ISE for Barcelona, the 31st of January through the 3rd of February. Toby will be going. Mr. Troast, are you headed to Barcelona?
I'll be there.
Awesome. We will see Mr. Troast there as well. So you can check all that out and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.